Have you been enjoying our Impact Podcasts and our great guests? Then please give us a thumbs up and leave a 5-star review on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you consume your favorite podcasts. This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by ERI. ERI has a mission to protect people, the planet, and your privacy, and is the largest fully integrated IT and electronics asset disposition provider and cybersecurity-focused hardware destruction company in the United States, and maybe even the world. For more information on how ERI can help your business properly dispose of outdated electronic hardware devices, please visit eridirect.com. This episode of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by Closed Loop Partners. Closed Loop Partners is a leading circular economy investor in the United States with an extensive network of Fortune 500 corporate investors, family offices, institutional investors, industry experts, and impact partners. Closed Loop's platform spans the arc of capital from venture capital to private equity, bridging gaps and fostering synergies to scale the circular economy. To find Closed Loop Partners, please go to www.closedlooppartners.com. Welcome to another edition of the Impact Podcast. I'm John Shigarian, and I'm so honored to have with us today Dr. Nidhi Pundhir. She is the Vice President of Global CSR for the HCLF Foundation, which is the CSR arm of HCLTech. You can find her at hclfoundation.org. Nidhi, welcome to the Impact Podcast.
Such a pleasure joining you here, John, and it's my honor to be with you today and looking forward to the conversation that we're going to have today.
And thank you for not only joining us, but giving us of your time. I know it's a different hour. You're sitting in India, I'm sitting in California. So I know our time zones are a little different, but it's sunny here in California. And I just feel like we're in the same room together anyway. So thank you for making the time for us today.
It's my pleasure. And as we say, it's one world, just separated by maybe time zones, but we connect so very well together on the larger impact that all of us are making. So thank you. Thank you for your time indeed.
Before we get talking about all the important things that HCLTech and the HCL Foundation are doing and that you're doing in conjunction with, can you share a little bit about yourself, how you got on this fascinating and important journey, where you grew up, and how you got started, even thinking about all the important topics that you're working on today?
That's a very interesting question. And often, when you get on with life, you kind of forget some of those. So thanks for reminding, childhood. And I would say that a lot of credit goes to the kind of childhood I have had, especially the profession that I finally chose, and I have been working for last 25 plus years now. I grew up in a family of teachers in a very small town in Rajasthan, and I know Rajasthan is popular for its deserts and camels and culture and tradition. So I very much grew up in a small place there, went to a local school, a kind of, I would say very diverse school. Again, I'll give a lot of credit to the school where I went to, which was also backed by a corporate in those times, bringing that kind of education to that small place. And then I went on to study life sciences. I'm very much a science student throughout, and I have always been fascinated by sciences. Did my master's in hospital systems management, did my MPhil in health systems management. And alongside work, I pursued my PhD in health systems management, once again, looking at the first 1,000 days of human life for children living in slums and how their right to health, the access to health services remains compromised, and that comes in the way of their well-being, etc. But I would say that growing up also meant growing up in a family of teachers, where discipline was something, which was given. Right. And most importantly, value system. And both my parents worked in remote villages. in those times. And my mother often used to, when I used to ask her, why do you leave home, leave us behind and go to those villages? We can be together and we can stick around. So my mother always used to say, she's no more now, but
Mm.
her teachings will always remain. She used to say that if I stay back for you, who's going to educate all those girls for whom I am given my salary? And those were the times in that state where many girls were pushed into early marriage. They would drop out of school for marriage. They would need to cohabit at a very, very young age, have their first child way before they were 18 years. So it was that time still, and we still have those incidences, but that has significantly reduced thanks to 2 3 generations of work in India. And more than, and now we are actually celebrating more than 75 years of independence. But independence meant a lot of sacrifice at the family level, by likes of my family. And my father was leading the adult literacy mission for
Oh,
the country. So I clearly remember in my childhood, during my break time, he would just ask me to accompany him in the remote villages. And in those times, we used to have those solar lanterns
yeah.
because a lot of villages did not have electricity.
Wow.
And there is this jeep vehicle which can actually go on sand dunes, and it can climb. And we didn't know if there's going to be a village next or not, because you could see nothing. And adult literacy, the big challenge is you cannot bring in adults during daytime. They only come together in the night time after their day job.
Wow.
So the whole program used to run in the evenings, late evenings, and we would go from village to village with those lanterns. People will circle around, and he would often ask me, especially when it was young girls and women, he would present me as an example that, look, we are educating her. You should educate your girls now and get yourself some education. So he developed teaching learning material, which one could actually draw symbols, script on sand using a stick.
Wow.
So there was no need for pen and paper, because pen and paper was completely alien in those communities. So it was, can you recognize the shape of the local stuff on which you cook? We call it chulha. I mean, the earthen stuff, so as to say. And one stick, and then the curve again, and then a shelter on it. So the local script you could actually draw,
Yeah.
and then women would quickly learn it because he would relate everything to all household items. So he led the conceptualization of such teaching. So education was something, I would say, which was inherent, which was there in the family. We would wake up at very early hours. I was in a way late riser because I used to wake up by 6:45 a.m. They all be up, both of them, at 4 a.m. cooking this, that, and and by the time I would have that guilt, oh my God, everybody's up. And they would have, then we all proceeded to our day jobs. And this is the upbringing I've had. And my elder brother, of course, who's also no more. But then he also used to be such a motivator, taught me cycling at a very early age. You must ride a bicycle. You must learn to ride a scooter. You must not go to a girls' only education. So I came from that kind of family, which, amidst a very conservative community, I would say, was pro education, which was pro development, extremely foresighted. My father is now 87 years old. But
Wow.
when we look back on the journey we've had, it's something which one can just cherish all those moments and be very, very, feel very proud of and be very privileged. So that was growing up for me.
And it just left an indelible mark on you that you wanted to carry that forward. You wanted to carry the learnings and the teachings of your parents. They just didn't speak their teach. They actually included you in the process. I could just imagine you as a little girl in that Jeep with your dad. I mean, how old were you? 6, 7, 8 years old, 10 years old with your pops?
Yeah, it started as early as I was 8 years, 7 years, I remember. I mean, even as a very young child, because, babysitting arrangements were not there, both of them were working. So
Uh,
they would take me to their respective school or office or make me sit and do something. So one actually grew up in that. And government schools, um, I remember wherever my mother used to be posted, they wouldn't have a toilet. So the first thing was she would make the collections and get a toilet made. And the moment there was a toilet constructed in the school, girls would enroll.
uh,
Women staff would start coming in. And so I've seen that as a child. So they took their job, or that sense of duty was so ingrained.
mm,
And that grew in, although I did my majors eventually in hospital management, and I could have been in that safe surrounding of hospitals, and I could have worked as a CEO and made a lot of profits. But that never appealed. Eventually, when I actually was working with a very big hospital, I set it up. But then it was not the calling, it was communities which were the calling. It was, getting on an onward journey. And I was privileged because I got more resources. I got the professional education on my side. I had management degree. I had right kind of place to be working in, and was trusted with resources to be deployed. So it's been a very, I would say, when I go back and I see how did that all happen? Why did I,
right.
choose to go to villages? Why did I choose to go to slums? I think that childhood has had
It,
some
it's not hard
big impact, I would
when
say.
you're retrospective. It's not hard for you to connect the dots. It all makes sense now. It all makes sense. That's
So
wonderful.
yeah, I mean, thank you for reminding me.
It's fun to hear it from you too. It's just fun to hear what an adventure, and it's great that your dad is still alive, that he's still with you. That's wonderful as well.
So in Hindi we say guru. So he's always been my guru, and he is there, and he's still, he'll call me once in a day. So uh, what are you doing? So I'll mention some project or something. Have you looked into this aspect? Have you looked at this risk in that community? So he's still kind of, always active and looking at different aspects, and more than father, he's been a guru, and he remains.
He remains your dad and your coach still. He's still your
Yes,
advisor. He's still
absolutely,
teaching you.
absolutely,
That's wonderful.
absolutely.
So that's where we have the modern day word that's part of our vernacular and lexicon, guru. It's a Hindi
It's a
terminology,
Hindi. It's a guru is a Hindi. So we have, in Sanskrit we say Guru Re Brahma, Guru Re Vishnu. You
right?
know, so it's basically guru is beyond God. So there is this say. I mean, I can just give the translated version. So there is, a person, and he's going and asks whether I should be touching God's feet first or Guru's. So the God himself, Krishna, would
Yeah,
direct. It's the Guru, because
he's above.
it's they
He's
give
above
you
you.
it's the teacher and the coach who gives you direction.
Wow,
Uh,
and that's
who's
with
more
God's
important.
permission, and that's with God's permission. Wow,
Absolutely, absolutely.
I
So,
love.
so you find your God in your coach, and of course, I've been very privileged to have very good mentors in my institute, in my journey, and extremely good people to be working with. So I think they all have been very well-meaning people, more than and that actually affects eventually in your journey. So while you do make a choice with your facilitators and your mentors, but I think it's also how everything comes together, falls together. For example, my mentor, Dr. S.T. Gupta, in whose name there is a public health institution in India now, Dr. S.T. Gupta School of Public Health. He's 75, and he studied at Johns Hopkins in those times.
Oh,
And he came back, a medical doctor. And he came back and launched this Institute of Health Management Research in India. And after doing my life sciences graduation, when I went there, I was selected as a first batch. So, first risk taker, first batch. Okay, let's go and do this public health management, hospital management. In those times, these branches were unknown. I mean, people would go to conventional medicine and post graduation also they'll go into teaching, do masters, and or pick up a banking job or something like that, especially for women. And we 22 of us took the risk. We cleared the exam and we took the risk. Diverse batch was formed from all over India. Some professionals, some very senior people, some very young people, and we got onto the journey. And Dr. S.T. Gupta, whenever we used to talk to him about jobs and risk, he was like, "You'll never need to look back, because public health, where you're venturing, the unmet need is so high of people who can manage the whole thing." And I finished recently also my PhD with him and Dr. Arindam, and looking into the slums and looking into the data continuity and so on and so forth. So I think lots to learn from these people is the dedication, because they went and took the highest order of education. They researched and they got back, and they've been serving the communities who needed the most. But uh, also training people academically, that's extremely important, to give them that professional degree, professional technique to be able to address the
Wow.
socio-economic, developmental and environmental issues, because social work is no longer charity.
Right.
It cannot be just done with one-off approaches. We do need full design thinking. We need implementation strategies. We need monitoring and evaluation frameworks. So it's a full time, more than full time,
Wow.
I would say addiction, if I may use
Right.
the word, to
Right.
delve deeper into these issues.
Nidhi, I'd like to go into a little bit about what you do on your day-to-day life. Um, Talk a little bit before we get into the HCL Foundation. Talk a little bit about HCL Tech for our listeners and viewers who are not familiar with HCL Tech. How big is HCL Tech, and when was it started, and what's its reach look like today?
Right. So again, it's almost more than 8 years for me in HCLTech
Wow.
already, and each year it's growing and growing and growing. And it's an IT industry fundamentally. It's a
Okay.
technology company, as the name already suggests. Of course, found in India by our emeritus founder, Mr. Shiv Nadar, whose dream was to first, of course, it was computers, and getting computers to India, and it was known as Hindustan Computers Limited in those times. But
Wow.
then later on it got into hardcore technology interventions, and 46 years now. First generation company grew from scratch, and today has 220,000 plus people across the globe.
Wow. Wow. It's a huge company. It's a huge company. And is it publicly traded on the Bombay Exchange, or is it a privately
Yeah,
held
it's
company? Okay.
listed. It's listed.
It's
It's
listed.
listed. It's HCL Technologies Limited as registered, and it's 60 plus countries. As I said, it's close 14 billion um, you know dollars revenue, and of
Wow.
course, we've redefined our brand, and we've recently said that we supercharge progress. So it's supercharging progress, and so if you talk about several platforms today, and when you'll go deeper into them, back end you will find HCL Tech. So we very proudly say, if you've booked a plane ticket, if you've done banking, if you have anywhere been in contact, maybe you and I talking, who knows,
Right.
back end we have a bunch of our highly qualified techies fueling it.
Wonderful. And now talk a little bit about the grant. I mean, we're going to talk about the foundation, but before we get to the foundation, let's talk about what is the HCL Tech grant and how does it actually work in the real world?
Right. So HCL Tech grant, it was again an idea which was, I would say, conceived by our chairperson, Mrs. Roshni Nadar Malhotra. And this was 2015-16, when Roshni was thinking about how better to rather institutionalize corporate social responsibility. So it was our first attempt, where
Hmm.
we said, while there's lots which can be done, and it's one part of our larger CSR interventions. I mean, we do a whole lot of, it's more than 35 million deployment per year within India itself. But then a part of it, we thought, let's look at how do we institutionalize, how do we really build that connect with the non-government organizations and a corporate coming out and recognizing the kind of contribution that civil society, non-government organizations, the heroes are making, because they've been working in the hinterlands for many, many years. There wasn't any kind of award, till then, when we came up with this entire grant mechanism. So HCLTech grant was just not about a project funding or a project grant. It was rather recognition, or rather, bringing them on a much bigger platform and providing them with national and international recognition. So an independent methodology, a robust methodology was brought in place. It's a very democratic process. It has an independent jury. It has a knowledge partner, governance partner, so as to say, and the call for applications happens in a very, very transparent way. So we have a 250 days, so as to say, methodology, which has been rolled out over 9 years consecutively now, consistently, wherein a similar process with improvisation, of course. So we say one is our edition rollout, when we say that there'll be a call for applications. So the portal remains open for 60 days. NGOs apply. If I'm not mistaken, I mean, this year we had 17,000 organizations register for it.
Wow.
And I mean, of course, in India, we have more than 3 million, organizations which are uh, working. They're on government portals somehow, or they are there. But, we do have very stringent eligibility criteria. But then through this grant, we've been able to deploy, almost 15.8 million to 49 NGOs. But just coming back to the process, how it has its reach. So it's all states of India. We travel across, we touch the ground. We have symposiums for all these organizations who register. So it's kind of, a big process where methodology is more important than the result. And I think the pull, when you see these 17,000 plus organizations registering each year, they come back. Many of them are also repeat applicants. It's almost like become the Oscars of the because they are enjoying the process, or rather they find it an opportunity to engage with the corporate. So we say NGOization and corporatization in a way. So it's the pace at which a corporate works. So there is lots to learn in terms of governance processes from the corporates, but there's lots to learn from the field optimization, or from being able to reach the most remote communities. So that's HCLTech grant is all about. And we, of course, started with 3 independent categories in India: education, health, and the year one was education. Then we added environment and health. And more than 40 NGOs have been awarded the grant so far in most remote locations, Sikkim, Jammu Kashmir, parts of Gujarat, parts of Nagaland, parts of West Bengal, parts of Rajasthan. So it almost covers a huge hinterland population, so as to say. So that's HCLTech grant, and it's one of the biggest CSR grants. If I yeah, I mean, lots of others have come after that, because they have been prototyping further. But then the idea was essentially to and also we called it the fifth estate in those times, because if you look at the constitutional provisions in India, I mean, we do have a role for judiciary, the executive, the bureau. I mean, if you look at the legislative, but then, and press also finds eventually a mention, but then the non-government lobby did not have that kind of recognition. So I think it was of its kinds the first attempt. And now we have scaled it up to the region of Americas. Recently, we opened the edition one, and we call it HCLTech grant for Americas, and we focused it on climate action. And so happy to say that yesterday we have concluded the middle round of selection, where 10 organizations out of closer 100 applications that we received from 10 countries of America's region, and phenomenal, from various biomes, and touching various SDGs, life on land, life underwater, and ecosystem services approaches, forest conservation approaches, water harvesting approaches, community led action, youth involvement, youth participation. It's just a delight to read all those applications. But eventually, there'll be a competition, and jury is going to pick few. But that's what HCLTech Grant is all about. So the foundation was, we are sitting in 2024. It was 2011 when the foundation was registered. But the foundation was registered later, but the community action started, I think, as soon as HCLTech, because employees had been doing it on their own. And we have this lovely campaign called Power of One, which already existed. And Power of One is something where each employee would give a part of their salary, voluntary basis, very minimal amount, but then they contribute to a central fund. And they, more than that, they contribute their time. So we actually clock more than 100,000 to 150, depending on, so each year it's kind of, because COVID time it's slightly low, but it's gone back to 150,000 hours by our own employees just in community action. So in 2011, the HCL Foundation was also registered as an entity. And of course, it has now its own funds and 400 people on rolls.
So suffice it to say, HCL Tech, at its founding, at its core, at its DNA, was not only all about the technology revolution that they wanted to bring and have India enjoy, but they were also very community minded in terms of philanthropy and giving back, as you say, not only of capital, but of time from its inception. In 2011, it was just the codification of all this philanthropy, both monetary and also time, which created the foundation, which you've been at for 8 years now.
Absolutely. So I think it was more about making a little more organized efforts, and more from the legal perspective also, because there's a difference in a not-for-profit and a for-profit entity. So HCL Foundation is a not-for-profit entity, and where we also are able to, I would say, engage with government stakeholders, co-create. There are many public-private partnership models that we have. We've signed MOUs with the government. We've signed MOUs with different people who would want to contribute in many ways. There are community-based organizations. There are farmers collectives. So because of the nature of business, and that's where I say, professionalism comes in. And which takes a slightly different approach from one-off charity.
Understood. If you've just joined us now, we've got Dr. Nidhi Pundhir with us today. She's the Vice President and Global CSR of the HCL Foundation, which is the CSR arm of HCL Tech. You can find Dr. Nidhi Pundhir and her colleagues at hclfoundation.org. It will also be in the show notes. So all the contact information and all the websites will be in the show notes. Nidhi, talk a little bit about the HCL grant, and although it seemingly benefits only the great people of India, how will it benefit communities outside of India as well?
So HCL grant, I think it's kind of already, I would say it's 9th year now, and we have set a model in one of the biggest democracies, country with maximum population, and of the registered organizations which work for not-for-profit. So the model has already been replicated in certain parts. Our own partners are also working. For example, if we are working on a bee conservation model in parts of Nilgiris, or we are working on spring conservation on parts of Nilgiris or Gujarat, or if we are doing on community governance, the green community governance campaign. So some of these campaigns are already reaching parts of Africa, parts of South Americas. There is a huge network out there through which these best practices are already propagating. Talking about things like peace education in the valley of Jammu Kashmir or Ladakh, where schools were closed down for many months altogether. These modules have been adopted not by the local union territory ministries, or talking about the malnutrition, indigenous solutions of malnutrition in West Bengal, villages of West Bengal, which have already been scaled up at the level of by government across the state. I would say, these innovations or these techniques that work with local communities have already found place across, because we have similar communities across the world, parts of Indonesia, parts of Africa, parts of South America, and so on and so forth. Also, there are models around hunger, there are models around poverty alleviation, there are models around ecosystem conservation, native species conservation, flora, fauna, so on. And so there's a lot of research which HCLTech grant has been able to fund. There's a lot of innovation, there's a lot of community connect. How do we really? So all these best practices also have been documented uh, in depth in our compendium, which we propagate across the world. And it's called the Fifth Estate. So this year we had the volume 7 coming out, which is also available. So that is, I would say, a gift for the larger international development community. But we've actually we've come to Americas now. And I think that's a direct reach, and it's a separate CSR. Of course, it's under the banner of larger HCLTech grant, but we have an independent jury for the Americas grant.
Oh.
There is an independent process. We are working with an independent governance partner and local research institutions. The biomes in America's region are very different. The services that need to happen in that region. But I think the learning from 9 years of implementing HCLTech grant in India, one thing which is very, very common is that the only pathway to sustainability is community-based governance. Unless we work with local communities, through local solutions, through indigenous voices, we'll not be able to act swiftly and sustainably. So that is, I think, it's a very, very common connect. So when we were doing the screening of applications, if I look at edition 1 of India grant versus now edition 1 of America's grant, so many things came very naturally to us, because we've done that. We've touched the field. We've traveled. We've kind of tested the proof of concept, if you like. And so if you're reading applications from Peru, from Colombia, from Argentina, from parts of Canada, parts of US, it was so exciting to see that the fabric remains same. It's very much similar, and here we are with already a short list of 10 bright stars.
And you have a separate jury for all those other areas outside of India.
Yes. And very local, with local voices represented on the jury.
Talk a little bit about climate change, Nidhi. What's your feelings on the importance of taking urgent action on climate change, and how does the HCL Foundation, best exercise its ability to effectuate climate change, action and now?
Yeah, so pertinent in the times that you and I are talking. And if I go back to my childhood, I actually grew up in a place which had a tiger reserve. And if you talk about it now, I mean, we are talking about water scarcity, we're talking about polluted air, we are breathing polluted air, so as to say. So it's very much an urgency or an emergency situation, and the recent the conclusion from COP, where it was all about eventually the fund, the climate action, the disaster reduction and adaptation and mitigation. So it's. I mean, we just can't wait. I mean, there's nothing
Yeah.
like that. We can even wait now.
Yeah.
So our climate action grant in Americas is a clear message that we really want to invest, we are concerned, we want to get into community action. Look at the fast depleting biomes, the flora, fauna, native species. How do we really? And of course, there are lots of reasons that we are all aware of: fast depleting habitats, depleting, the action, especially the genuine action that we really need. Forest fires and all are, of course, continuing phenomena, but the carbon footprint, a massive carbon footprint that we have, and how do we really? So I think we've been very much ESG compliant as a group. Of course, we are an IT industry, so in general also we are low. But then, if I look at through our CSR initiatives, we've been able to conserve the last validated figure is 57 billion liters of water
Wow.
through our water bodies, which we have rejuvenated from scratch through our various interventions on water conservation with communities, with government. And those are now such beautiful sites. I mean, I was at one site yesterday, and which used to be a wasteland. I spotted at least 15 to 20 new types of birds.
Wow.
It was full of water. It
Wow.
had flora around it. It had children playing around it. We had children's clubs. So, so what I'm saying with climate action is that it's a small action. Just identify a small water
Right.
body, identify a small patch of land, identify few native species, talk to people, older people who knew about indigenous um, varieties that used to exist. So climate action at the end of the day is a very simple thing.
Mm.
It's a simple thing, but action is needed.
Well, it's like you said at the top of the conversation. We live in one world. We all share one environment. So when you give me a story of hope that you went to this area that used to be a little bit run down years ago, and now it's become an oasis of hope with 15 new bird species there and clean water, that's good for all of us. That means we're healing the environment where you're at, which is going to positively affect where we are. Because, like you said, we're one world. We're one world. That's
Absolutely.
beautiful. That's beautiful. Does the HCL Foundation create an annual impact report or CSR report?
Absolutely. So all the numbers, I think one thing that we are very particular about is measure, measure, measure.
Sure.
Because at the end of the day, there is a fund deployment behind, there is a human resource deployment, there's material deployment. And all of this needs to be measured, whether it is reaching the right people, is it relevant? Is it something where the cost benefit analysis has been done? Is it a financially viable model? Is it not duplication of funds? Because whatever little you have, if you go and so definitely we put out our annual report religiously each year. It goes out and it has all the numbers, your 5.5 million people validated. We are working with people living with disabilities. We're working with transgender communities. We're working with young children. That's also a big focus for us because early childhood development, care and development is critical. We're working with a lot of youth who drop out because of irrelevant education system. And we have more than trainings on more than 90 vocational trades for them through which they come back to the job market. We surely have our environmental numbers validated, including our water foot. In fact, this basis our third-party validated report and Government of India's investigation, we were felicitated with the National Water Award as the best in industry. By Honorable Vice President of India himself felicitated the award. So everything is verified. One can come, one can see, and that's where again I'll say that a team of 400 qualified professionals. That's what we do.
Well, Nidhi, you've been at the HCL Foundation now for about 8.5 years. Talk a little bit about some of the your favorite or most successful winning climate action initiatives that have launched during those 8.5 years that you want to share with our audience today.
Okay, that's always a tough question because each project that we do, it's dear to us, and
it's like choosing among your children. Who's your favorite?
It's. But I think there are certain memories that I can share with you because we travel a lot and we live in the villages, or we at least spend many hours just experiencing what we are doing. There is this entire, we call it Shola conservation. If you actually go to the Nilgiris, and so we didn't know much about it, that if you actually have bunches of plantation of the native species. So we were trying to investigate, and the proposal was all around spring conservation. And we were like, how are the two connected? I mean, it sounds very scientific that it should happen, but does it happen?
Right.
So, but there is this whole thing about capillary action. So if you have lots and lots of trees in bunches in the hills, you must have seen, and they would actually clear off certain area, which is not a good practice. So how do you work with the communities in order for them not to touch the native indigenous plantation and replant it? Because with that capillary action, also you are actually able to conserve the local springs, because springs are going away. And if when springs go away, you will not have water conserved in a natural way. So in 5 years' time of the grant, that has been proven. That has reduced the human-wildlife conflict because wildlife goes to the spring area and humans have a separate area. We have another example of community green governance where with X amount of funding from us, almost 5 times of the funding from government has been unlocked because local communities have been able to develop their village development plans, which are environment-centric. So they have been able to identify the local pasture land, and they've been able to regreen it, because we are not saying that we touch the grasslands. We actually go back and we also the kind of R&D and research and development that happens. So for example, the role of bees, the B-E-E-B,
yeah,
which we none of us would, oh, there's a bee there and it's fine, but bees are going extinct. And if bees go away, there'll be no nature, there'll be no ecosystem. So as small as bee, because bees are responsible for pollination of so many flora. So there's this project.
Linchpin to our whole ecosystem, right?
Whole ecosystem. It's so, and it is becoming, and then there's this project that won the grant. And when we went inside the villages and we saw that how with bee conservation, the apis and certain other varieties of bees, the mango crop has become better, and the local farmers have stopped using, and they are rather cultivating, they're putting bee boxes. And with that, the bee population is going up, but the local farmer has to see the benefit, and they are getting better variety of mangoes. And you travel past that area and you actually have this aroma of the mahua and the mango, and
wow.
So there's a lot of fun also. There is a lot of learning all the time because nature is so rich. You can never finish learning about it. And when you are able to,
let's go back to your last example. You said you were doing a project and you unlocked the government provided, it was a partnership with the government that provided 5x of what your investment was. So you're a big believer in leveraging the power of cross-sector collaborations to create sustainable solutions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No question on that, because partnerships, I mean, if we go to the goal number 17 of SDGs, fundamental to the success of any development program, because we can never, ever think about getting success if we worked in isolation, or if we duplicated the state system's efforts, or if we did not talk to our stakeholders, we did not have co-creation on a table. together. Because if you look at the state systems, they are equally concerned. They are equally putting out their
Right.
plans, and they're putting out the funds in much higher their human resource. There is a system in place, but there's still hinterlands. There are still places. If you look at certain pockets, they still are not in the mainstream. There's high level of maternal mortality, or there's high level of wildlife conflict, or so on and so forth. So there are several issues which need a resolution, which need innovation, which need research, which also need a longer term work and commitment. So we actually get into formal partnership with the state, or the communities with whom we work, they get into. So for example, if you are able to help the village with their village development plan, and if you are able to work with them such that they prioritize their own funding, it's a much more sustainable way of working than just going and doing it for them, because then you are making them dependent on some external resource, which is going to fade out one fine day.
Right.
So partnership with communities is also critical, very critical. The most important critical partnership is with the communities.
Got it. And got it. Let's go back to the impact and CSR report. You produce that every year. What time of year does that come out approximately every year?
So usually it's the end of first quarter Q1, which
Right.
would be around May, June, is when we kind of
And
have
once it comes out,
because we have to have audited figures.
Right. And once it comes out, it lives in perpetuity on HCLFoundation.org.
Yes, both at HCLTech and HCL Foundation.
So our listeners and viewers can find that and look at all.
And our recent, all reports are there. All reports.
Wonderful.
They're all there. All compendiums are there. There are many videos. If you really want to travel, maybe you don't physically travel, but all the videos of HCL Tech India grant, and now there'll be America's grant also. They are journey within themselves. So you can watch them.
And like you said, you need to have all these issues measured, because how are you as a leader, as the vice president of global CSR, how are you going to manage them if you don't have measurable outcomes? So it makes so much sense to put a compendium report together every year, and for your own sake and your other leaders' sake, and then also for your constituents and the public at large's sake too.
Absolutely. And it's also a matter of accountability.
Right.
I mean, if you look at companies, they have to put out their P&L.
That's right.
So, and in this segment, it's rather more important, because where is the money going? Where's the resource going? Where is the time going? So corporate social responsibility is a serious business. It is a 24/7 plus, because we also respond to humanitarian needs. We've recently responded to the Michong cyclone. I remember I was in COP, and then I got a call that a cyclone has hit Chennai, and I took the first flight back. The airport was still to get operational. So one was contemplating which. So I think on one side, where you are part of the larger policy advocacy agenda, the other side, you are actually trying to revive the pond example I gave you, the bees example I gave you, the spring example I gave you. We are still hit with disasters, and we got to be ready with our preparedness and be on ground. So I think at the end of the day, and all those relief kits, where do they go? So we even measure all of that. It's important. It's something where we should not compromise if we are in the socioeconomic. And I'm a firm believer, and so is my team.
Nidhi, we talked earlier in our conversation, we talked a little bit about your dad, who's now 87, and he still calls you every day. He's still your guru. You're very relatively young still, obviously, and you have longevity in your family. So, you have decades and decades more to live healthy and accomplish. What are you most excited about accomplishing in the future, in the years to come?
Well, that's again a tough question, but there is a family, of course. I'm blessed with two boys. Both are in their prime of teens right now.
Good. They'll keep you busy. They'll keep you busy too, right?
Yes, they are keeping me busy. And of course, my supporting a husband, a friend, um, personal front, and a very big family, of course. So we all celebrate, and all of them are quite accomplished in their own fields.
Mm.
So there's a lot of celebration that goes around. So I would very much want to be in, and of course the batch I talked about, 22 people at masters, and then of course PhDs and all. It's difficult to keep track of, but then alumni associations definitely are very attractive, and we spend a lot of time together, and that gives me professional fuel. But at the end of, I think it's all about being satisfied with oneself, that I did my best that I could, and both with professional and personal skills, and most importantly the passion that I have had. I hope I'm able to transfer and be with such people eventually, and keep doing, keep
So
working.
something tells me that when you're 87 years old, many, many years from now, you're going to be calling your boys and asking them every day, what are you up to? And then you're going to be giving them advice like your dad.
I hope so that happens, but times are changing, generations are changing.
You might be texting them. You might be texting them or something.
AI would have teleported two of us.
That's probably more true too. How can our listeners and viewers get more involved and support your foundation? Before I let you go, how can people who are motivated and excited about what they heard about what you're doing today with the HCL Foundation, how can they get more involved and how can they support?
So, of course, we have volunteering opportunities across our programs. Write to us, intern with us. We have many interns who come with us, short term, long term. You can be involved in surveys, you can be involved in measuring, you can be involved in implementation. We have a team of 400 individuals plus 200 partners, through whom another 2,500. So all welcoming, and just show up, show your interest, and there'll be something for you.
Well, listen, one thing I want to wish you is continued good health, continued success. I want to thank you for your time today, especially because time is the most precious thing we all have. Thank you for your time to share not only your background and your history, but the wonderful and important and impactful work you're doing at the HCL Foundation. For people who want to find Dr. Nidhi Pundhir and her colleagues and all the important work they're doing at the HCL Foundation, please go to www.hclfoundation.org. Dr. Pundhir, thank you for everything you do. Thank you for this wonderful conversation. I hope to have you back on the Impact one day and continue to hear about your journey at the HCL Foundation and in life. And I just want to thank you for you and all your colleagues at HCLTech and HCL Foundation for making the world a better place.
Such a pleasure interacting with you, John. And it's been totally, I would say, last 1 hour, one didn't realize where it. And thank you for taking back to childhood memories, as well as the hinterlands where we work. And I will remain committed and will continue to do what we can. Thank you so much. Such a pleasure. Thank you.
This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by Engage. Engage is a digital booking platform revolutionizing the talent booking industry. With thousands of athletes, celebrities, entrepreneurs, and business leaders, Engage is the go-to spot for booking talent, for speeches, custom experiences, live streams, and much more. For more information on Engage or to book talent today, visit letsengage.com. This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by ERI. ERI has a mission to protect people, the planet, and your privacy, and is the largest fully integrated IT and electronics asset disposition provider and cybersecurity-focused hardware destruction company in the United States, and maybe even the world. For more information on how ERI can help your business properly dispose of outdated electronic hardware devices, please visit eridirect.com.